Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly excited for this one. Today, we're diving into a full-blown rent versus buy audit. If you've ever stressed, and I mean really lost sleep, over whether to keep renting or finally lock down and buy a home, well, buckle up. We're going to look at some data today that is going to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about the modern housing market. It's an absolute game changer.
Are you throwing your money away? Be honest, how many times have you asked yourself this exact question? It taps directly into that deep, age-old anxiety we all feel every single month when we pay rent. Society has practically conditioned us to believe that renting is literally just setting fire to a pile of cash, right? We feel this absolutely massive pressure to get a mortgage and just stop wasting money. But today, we're going to put that major assumption to the test.
Okay, let's dive into this. In the classic rent versus buy debate, society has long accepted a basic premise as undeniably true. The story goes, renting is just throwing your hard-earned money away, while buying is the foolproof, magical path to building lifelong wealth. It's kind of the core tenet of the whole American dream. But what if the very foundation of how we measure that wealth building is totally flawed? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it introduces a completely different paradigm. It's called the unrecoverable cost. And this concept absolutely changes the rules of the housing game. Instead of just looking at your monthly payments, we need to focus purely on the strict math of money that never, ever comes back. Whether you rent a tiny apartment or buy a massive sprawling house, some of your money will always just vanish into thin air. If we want to truly compare renting and buying head-to-head, this is the math that actually matters. Let's see how this builds. When you buy a house, common wisdom says you're paying yourself. You're building equity, right? But let's look at 4 specific, completely hidden costs of homeownership: mortgage interest, property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. These are entirely unrecoverable. When you pay tens of thousands of dollars in interest to the bank or have to fork out cash to fix a leaking roof, you aren't building a dime of equity. You aren't getting a single cent of that money back when you eventually sell.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the source material frames this reality. It's fascinating. Those 4 major expenses we just talked about, the interest, the taxes, the maintenance, and the insurance, they are essentially just rent paid to the bank and the county. You might think you finally escaped paying rent the moment you signed those closing papers, but mathematically, you just changed who your landlord is.
So the crucial point is that homeowners are essentially paying rent too. Buying a home does not give you some magical, invisible shield against unrecoverable costs. Once we actually strip away the illusion and put these hidden homeownership costs on the exact same scale as your monthly apartment rent, the math looks wildly different than what financial gurus have been teaching us for decades. Which brings us to a very specific and honestly a highly revealing number: 49. Just take a second and think about the massive shifts we've seen in housing costs and interest rates lately. What on earth does the number 49 have to do with whether you personally should rent or buy right now? Well, here's the staggering reality. According to the data, out of the 50 largest metro areas in the entire United States, renting is currently cheaper in 49 of them. Take a moment to let that sink in. When you properly audit those unrecoverable costs, meaning you compare your apartment rent against that hidden rent you'd pay to the bank and the county, renting actually saves you money in almost every single major market. Buying is mathematically cheaper in only 1 major city out of 50, just 1. Simply put, the math has completely changed. This isn't your parents' or your grandparents' housing market anymore. Blindly following that outdated advice to just buy a house at all costs, well, it could cost you dearly. The blanket assumption that buying is always superior is literally a relic of a completely different economic era. You have to look at your specific city and actually run the unrecoverable numbers that are sitting right in front of you. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Are you currently making huge housing choices based on an illusion? And more importantly, will you audit your own assumptions before making your next big financial move? Please don't just blindly follow the crowd. Run the numbers, find out your true unrecoverable costs, and make the choice that actually builds your future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.